What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight podcast powered by Anderson and Levine Accident Attorneys. It's Monday. We got some injury news on the positive front. Players coming back. Mario saying Jalen Rivers back at left tackle. Elijah Alston back at the jack linebacker spot. Miami's getting healthy. We'll talk about the impact of these returns. Also, FSU game, primetime. We'll talk about that game. Bunch of other stuff. First, want to talk about my friends at Anderson and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anderson and Levine. Pete, hop in.
Big week, D. Big week here. The value of the bye week, obviously, right? So Jalen Rivers been talking about the impact not having him there has had on this offensive line. And I think Markel Bell has done a good job. We've talked about this over the last couple of weeks. Better job than I think most of the fans would say on social media and stuff like that. But got beat a couple times each of the last couple games. But overall, I thought he was very solid. Really good signs, for the future with him. But Jalen Rivers, you're getting the best left tackle in the ACC back. I think one of the best left tackles in the country in college football back as well. And you haven't had him, right, for the last month plus. So I think people have kind of overlooked missing him and what that has meant to this offense.
Yeah, and I think to me, it's really the best of all worlds because you're undefeated. Your quarterback is healthy. You didn't get knocked out. But you got your third tackle, significant, meaningful reps, big games, high-stress moments, going against good pass rushers, having to be resilient, getting beat, coming back, having some dominant reps after some bad ones. So the growth for a player like Markel Bell, who is an older player in age, but very young and experienced, fresh from JUCO, I think this is invaluable. And with his size, with his ability, with what he showed in the time when Jalen Rivers was out, you now have a player that you could feel good about as a tackle of the future and the present if someone goes down. But now as we head to this final stretch, you get Jalen Rivers back and allow him to take over as really the foundation of the offensive line and the rock of that offense along with Cam Ward. So extremely, extremely excited to get Jalen Rivers back and grateful that Miami was able to get so many meaningful reps from Markel Bell without losing a game and without getting that quarterback hurt and with him playing well.
Yeah, and I mentioned this the other day, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Markel Bell continue to get worked into the mix there, as an extra offensive lineman. But we've seen at times, and look, with Rivers coming back, I would expect him to fully play at that position. But you never know. It would be interesting to see if there's some tinkering going on. And this is just complete speculation. But we've talked about Francis Mauanoa sliding inside to guard. Is that something that's in his future? He's been phenomenal as a right tackle. But again, if guys go down and you need to shift things around, I wouldn't be surprised based on some things I've heard if Markel Bell continues to get reps here. And look, you don't want to I don't know if stunt his growth is the right term here because he's gotten invaluable experience the last few weeks here. But if you can keep it going and keep him used to the speed of the game, right, then I think that's a positive for Miami.
No question about it. And Mario loves to keep these guys engaged. We saw, not with Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal, but back with Jeff Stoutland, unbalanced formations with multiple tackles. I know people want more receivers on the field, not less. But there's ways you can get a tackle that you want on the field. And I think the good thing is you're not forcing him to get those reps for experience purposes because you got so many starts that you really did get an expedited experience for him when he would otherwise be sitting on the bench. So you don't need to put him on the field unless you think he's going to help you win. But Pete, you're hearing it, and that vibes with what I'm hearing, which is that they want to get Markel Bell to remain a part of this team, not just on the roster, but actively helping this particular team that's on the field win as a member of the offense somehow, some way. He was very, very impressive, and the arrow is pointing up with Markel Bell. But everybody's happy to have Jalen Rivers back as we head into what could be an ACC championship run down the stretch. It's very tight with SMU playing well, with Pitt playing well, Clemson playing well. So if you want to get in there, you're going to have to really, really do a nice job in the ACC, potentially win every single game. A guy like Jalen Rivers, with his consistency and experience, gives you a much better chance to avoid the one game where you get a strip sack or something, the play that you give up ends up costing you the game. Rivers is not going to be perfect, but he's going to be a lot more consistent than Bell, who would give up a sack pretty much every game or a clean hit and then follow it up with some dominant reps. Rivers is going to give you just much more consistency because of his experience, because where he's at the stage of development.
And then on the other side of the ball, Elijah Alston will be coming back, as we mentioned at the start of the show here. Mario Cristobal just moments ago announcing it during his weekly press conference that he does on Mondays. And D, this is a guy, Elijah Alston, who, of course, transferred from Marshall. We had him on the CanesInSight podcast after the spring game, right? So when we got to meet him, great kid and all that, but was one of Miami's best players the first month of the season. I think the last memory we have of him is that Virginia Tech game. Didn't have a great first half there and then got hurt before he came out of the game. But before that was making plays in every game. And I think his value as a spy on the quarterback as well is really, really high.
Yeah, I think his mistakes in that Virginia Tech game were very much overruns, things that are not, just him getting overwhelmed athletically or physically. He's been an impact player when he's been on the field. Those kind of things he can work on. Not every quarterback's going to give him those kind of problems. You're not going to get that with a Tyler Schuff or really a lot of the quarterbacks remaining on Miami's schedule, Haynes King being an exception. But, Alston really was one of the better players on the team. We've not seen Elijah Alston and Bain together, just like we've seen only briefly him and Barron together. That's what excites me, because Elijah Alston, with the way he buzzes around, his activity, his motor, his speed, his change of direction, he's a good cleanup guy. Because he can chase you down. He's not going to be someone's going to be easy to juke or elude. So Ruben Bain is flushing these quarterbacks out with his bull rush, with his speed to power, with his ability to bend. That's going to happen. The quarterback then flushes out, and he's got Elijah Alston chasing him in the scramble. Like those odds. Also, Akeem Messidor. Bain's impact with these kind of players, with high motors, with experience, with production, I think is going to take this defense to another level. There's still going to be some of the same flaws. Right now, it's an average defense because of some of those flaws. But when you have that kind of attack up front, led by Ruben Bain, but supplemented by guys like Alston, who are draftable, who can move, now you have potentially a dominant pass rush as opposed to a pass rush that's merely, good. And a couple numbers here I want to get into actually on the Rivers front before I get too far away from this. So I went to teamrankings.com, looked at how good we are at protecting the passer. So now we're back on pass blocking, Jalen Rivers, Markel Bell, their performance. And this is, it's a team stat, but if you look at Miami in terms of sack percentage, there's a stat I look at very close: sack percentage against FBS competition, meaning what percentage of your snaps against FBS competition that are potentially sack-worthy plays result in a sack. So how many dropbacks result in sacks? Miami's 28th nationally, so pretty good. 3.37% allowed sacks. Miami was much higher with Tyler Van Dyke in the 20s, the higher 20s. And that was with Van Dyke not being as mobile as Cam Ward. Cam Ward does hold on to the ball quite a bit. I believe Miami's 101st in the amount of time that the quarterback holds on to the ball. Story came out today with Jordan Reed on ESPN where he talked about some scouts and how Cam Ward fit into potentially the first round. That was a stat he mentioned that scouts were keeping an eye on, that he holds the ball more than most quarterbacks, 101st in the nation. But 3.37% sack percentage, that's low, 28th in the country. Now, if you look at the sack percentage for the defenses Miami's going to be facing, so Markel Bell and Jalen Rivers will be facing, 115th pass rush for Louisville, 12th ranked pass rush for Florida State. That'll be a game you definitely want Rivers. 131st ranked pass rush for Wake Forest, 74th Syracuse, 72nd Duke, 123rd Georgia Tech. So really, Rivers and Bell, to the extent that he keeps playing, are not going to be facing major pass rushes going forward. I know we were going to talk about Elijah Alston. I wanted to get back to this pass rush issue because to me, 28th is good, especially when your quarterback holds onto the ball like Cam Ward does, but you want that number in the teens. I think you could see that number in the teens by the end of the year with the return of Rivers.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, look, Bell, we've talked about the positives, but giving up a couple sacks, had that holding that wasn't really holding against Virginia Tech. But yeah, I mean, look, you would expect it to jump up with Rivers, who has been so solid over the last couple of years at Miami and playing that tackle spot, which he played guard early in his career. I'm not sure what his future holds at the NFL in terms of what position he's going to play there. But when you're talking about at the college level, there's not many left tackles better than Jalen Rivers.
Yeah, and experience. This is a guy class of 2020, and he's been good since the start. It's not like he was someone that came in and really took a long time to develop. He was on the field early, had injuries, which allowed him to maintain his eligibility Of course, you had the COVID year and everything else, but he's somebody that I think when you really, when you look at what he brings to the team, it's not just the individual player and replacing Markel Bell. It's the intangibles, it's the leadership, it's the steadying presence of being such a smart, experienced guy. And Elijah Alston's the same way. Elijah Alston, a guy with a ton of snaps at Marshall, and has been a very good, impactful player, vocal player, physical tackler in the games he's played. So Miami's been without key players pretty much every game. This is the game, knock on wood, where you should be the healthiest going in if you count that injury to Bain in the first game where he basically only played a couple snaps.
Indeed, it's interesting. You mentioned the Florida State pass rush, 12th in the country there, and they announced the time for that game next weekend, of course, 7 p.m. at Hard Rock Stadium. So, of course, Florida State has not had the best season, but still getting the game in prime time here in Miami. So your early thoughts on that one. I said last week, one of my hot takes for the rest of the season is I think that's going to be the toughest game remaining on Miami's schedule. I understand just looking at records, it wouldn't appear that way, but it's a very similar situation to me comparing to what we saw last year with Miami going up to Doak Campbell, a top 5 team there with Jordan Travis. And of course, Miami with Emory Williams battled in that game. But Florida State up front still has guys defensively.
Yeah, and look, it was a great question. I want to ask the people listening to this in the comments. Let us know. Let us know in the comments. Let us know on social. Let us know in the CanesInSight.com forums. 7 million posts and counting for free. How much, or what would you say is the hardest game on the schedule? I guess the best question. What do you think is the hardest game remaining left, not including ACC, not including the playoffs? For me, I actually tend to agree with Pete that FSU is the game that worries me the most. It might end up being a blowout, but that pass rush, when we went over it, they're ranked top 15 in the country. They only need to be motivated once. They have bad motivation issues, bad character issues. You saw Daryl Jackson heading to the Turks and Caicos on a plane during the bye week when they're 1-5. If anyone from Miami did that, we'd have a heart attack, but I guess he's got the money. Good for him. But they have motivation issues. That game is probably a game they're going to be motivated, especially playing at night. So that concerns you a little bit. And then the fact that they have a good secondary. So they're really daring you to run the ball. And I think against FSU, you're going to have to run the ball outside at those ends, at Patrick Payton, at Marvin Jones, at guys that are really thin, want to rush the passer, don't want to get bullied by a Jalen Rivers or Noah. So I think it's a game we can blow them out and make them quit, but they're going to take away some of our strengths with their ability to rush the passer and their ability to play pretty decent pass defense as far as their defensive backs. I know they've gotten burned a bunch this year. Linebackers abysmal, but those guys could give you some problems. So I agree. I think Louisville's probably the toughest offense we'll face, and we'll be breaking them down all week as far as play caller, quarterback, personnel. They're going to be motivated. So yeah, could Louisville end up being the tighter game? Certainly. I just think we're going to be in the right mindset heading into that Louisville game, coming off these 2 close ones. And then FSU becomes an interesting game.
Yeah, not to turn this into a full FSU discussion, but they have Duke this week. I think they go and win that game. I believe it's a Friday night game, and maybe get Brock Glenn some confidence the way that Emory Williams had a little bit of confidence beating Clemson last year, right? So I think that's going to be one to watch for sure. So I'll have my eyes closely on that Florida State Duke game this weekend.
Yeah, I think, again, I don't get too far ahead, but the Duke game that you mentioned, as a Miami fan, what I'd like to see, obviously I want to see FSU lose every game. That's just, what you hope for. But particularly with this game, I'd like to see Glenn lose confidence. You mentioned you expect them to get confidence if they play well. I think you're right. But if Manny can get there with his blitzes, and if Manny can cook up a scheme and a plan to really throw off a young quarterback, which I think his defenses are kind of designed to do with how much they like to put pressure and disrupt and get you behind the 6. We saw Manny Diaz do very good against bad quarterbacks, and then against the better quarterbacks really struggled. Now, look, most guys are going to do better against bad quarterbacks than against good ones. That's not rocket science, but I think with the amount of blitzing the Manny did, it really amplified the effect on young quarterbacks. And when you could pick up the blitz effectively and you had the answers to the test as a veteran quarterback, you didn't have as much success. A guy like Brock Glenn, Manny could cause problems for him. And if he does, and FSU's not able to overcome that, they lose the game, Brock Glenn performs poorly, Now I think you're dealing with a confidence issue with that kid heading into Miami, and that's going to give Miami a major advantage. Florida State's not a steady team where you know what you're going to get. They're going to be up and down. It's a volatile season. It's a very fragile ecosystem with the culture, with players quitting, especially when guys are going to Turks and Caicos on the off week. So I'd love for Duke to beat Florida State, not just because I want Duke to beat Florida State, but because that can mess with Glenn's confidence, kind of kill it in the cradle, so to speak, and then Miami can finish the job.
I'm not putting any confidence in a Manny Diaz coach team, D. I'm sorry.
Hey, we'll see. I mean, look, this is the battle of the quarterbacks that were under 500. That, Manny lost to FIU, Norvell lost to Jacksonville State when they were still FCS. So a lot of parallels other than that one season where Norvell put it together. We'll see. I saw Manny Diaz, a Manny Diaz team completely destroy Mike Norvell. I guess Mike Norvell technically was sitting at home with a thermometer in his mouth, but that was as ugly as a game as I've seen in that rivalry was Florida State against Miami at Hard Rock. Of course, Florida State eventually returned the favor, basically ending Manny's career with that upset in Doak. But it's going to come down to the quarterback. I remember Jordan Travis made some sensational plays in that game. Is Brock Glenn going to be able to do some of those things athletically against Manny Diaz and then against the Miami Hurricanes? We'll see, but I'm glad it's a night game. I think Miami, that gives you a better chance of Miami being focused. And, so much of this is motivation. You saw the quarterback from Cal play the best game of his life against the team that didn't recruit him. You saw Drones from Virginia Tech play the best game of his life against his cousin, Cam Ward. You've seen motivation play an outsized role in some of these games. And I think Louisville's going to have motivation with all the South Florida guys they have. Brahms had Guidry's number at least last year. I think Miami's going to hear a lot of that negativity this week. And it's going to allow them to play a good game against Louisville, knowing that some teams think that they're a paper tiger based on the last two performances.
Agreed. So let's get to the Beacon Adjusters Player of the Week. Of course, we did not have a game last week, so we'll be talking recruiting here in a second. But D, I'll let you talk about Beacon Adjusters.
Yeah, so Beacon Adjusters, it's an ad you don't always have to make, but it is what it is. It's the nature of nature, right? Look at that philosophical discussion right there. If your property has been affected by Hurricane Milton, which a lot of people have, and also Hurricane Helene, Beacon Adjusters is here to help. With years of experience handling storm-related damage, we work tirelessly to ensure you get the compensation you deserve. From assessment to settlement, our team of trusted experts will guide you every step of the way. Don't face the aftermath alone. Let Beacon Adjusters Group restore your peace of mind. Call us today. That is Beacon Adjusters. So let me get the number here.
I got it. 954-466-4224.
Open 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and you can request an appointment on the website. So the Beacon Adjusters prospect of the week. We usually do a player of the week. Don't have a game, nothing to talk about with the Hurricanes, but we can talk about prospects. We were talking about Brock Schott, everybody's favorite, the tight end, H-back, linebacker, D-end from Indiana, the 4-star Miami commit. And if you guys are watching this on video, you're seeing this is a two-way player who plays with such incredible motor and toughness. He's getting off blocks and making tackles for loss on defense at end. He's blocking guys into the bleachers. And then right here, lines up a receiver, high points a ball, and then explodes on the screen, taking it about 60 yards to the house with pure speed and explosiveness. I believe he has timed laser in the 4.5s, verified at an Under Armour camp, a UC report affiliated camp. So that's an official time in the 4.5s. You see it here when he's rushing the passer unblocked, just completely demolishes the quarterback with speed. You see him getting off blocks. The toughness is not an issue. Notre Dame recruited this young man as a linebacker. He's probably more that size, a big linebacker than a DN, but he plays hard. He has tremendous speed, and it's just the consistent production that you see from him, whether he's H-back, whether he's running the ball, which he's done, whether he's blocking in line, whether he's playing wide receiver, or rushing the passer. He really does a lot. Similar to Elijah Lofton, but a different body type, a little longer, a little leaner, not as fluid as far as juking guys out, but somebody with probably better speed than Lofton in a straight line.
Yeah, this is my favorite football player in the class. I've said it a few times on this show, and you see everywhere he lines up, man, and all the different types of plays he's making. You see him standing up. You see him with his hand in the ground. I mean, just the motor, like we've talked about, the athleticism. They're throwing him screen passes. They're lining him up outside. They're lining him up in the slot. They're lining up in line. So there's really nothing he can't do. Obviously, this is not the best competition in the country that he's playing against, but we said it with some of these offensive line recruits. You got to dominate, and it's got to show up every single play when you're not playing, the 5A, 6A competition in South Florida and Texas and California and Georgia and some of these places we always talk about. But he does that, and it's going to be exciting to see how he's used within the offense at Miami once he gets here.
Yeah, I mean, from a single game highlight on minute 40, not with repeat plays, minute 40 of fresh plays, and they're all impact plays, blocking kicks, taking screens 70 yards to the house, sack, tackle for loss, blocking guys. That's as good a game highlight as you're going to get. Again, competition is poor, but there's a real deal player, a major, major piece for the Miami Hurricanes in their recruiting class. We'll talk about a major part of your wardrobe here with the new Alpha Boost version 2 from the Miami Hurricane team store. These, hope to see these all over the place when we go to FSU, at the Rock, at night. Look at these. I mean, what better thing to rock to the game? High performance, $130. Use promo code INSIGHT20. You get 20% off your first items. So go to the store, get the boost. You can also go to MiamiHTS.com. That is going to be your virtual storefront, or you can go to the actual physical store right in front of the University of Miami, next to the Thesis Hotel, right there on US 1. There you see all the Canes players modeling there. You got the new Cam Ward gear, which we talked about a ton, the Cam Ward jersey collection. Get your replicas. They're in U sizes as well. I know your kids are trying to do that celebration. I know they want to do that wearing the Cam Ward replica. So please, MiamiHTS.com or the store. The NIL related products like the jerseys aren't subject to this deal, but pretty much everything else, Insight 20, you get 20% off. Alpha Boost version 2 is there. You can get your whole wardrobe for the game against Florida State at the Miami Hurricane team store. I was talking about kids doing the Cam Ward celly. We saw it with the New York Giants. We saw it with the San Francisco 49ers. I saw it at the Savannah Banana game that I took my kids to at Marlins Park, at Lone Depot Park, 35,000 people there. Insane event. They were doing the Cam Ward celebration, rounding the bases. This thing is everywhere. But I know your client, your former client at First Round Management, is going to take a little bit of credit for this one.
Yeah, man. We saw Western Kentucky on Twitter the other day, because everyone is calling it the Cam Ward celebration. Look, he's made it popular. It wouldn't be out there everywhere if Miami wasn't winning and he wasn't doing what he was doing right now. But I gotta give some credit to these guys, right? Listen, no one's gonna want to give them credit, and people are gonna say, well, again, they aren't doing it because of Western Kentucky. But I'm gonna pull up a picture here. My guy Dawood Davis, who actually is a former Mario recruit from Oregon, signed him out of Western Kentucky a couple years ago. He was one of the top receivers in the UFL this last year. Was with the Dolphins in camp, had a really bad injury.
South Florida guy that Mario brought to Oregon and then transferred to Western Kentucky.
He's a Deerfield Beach guy. This is a couple years ago when we signed him there. And look, I got to give him some love, man. Cam has made it popular, but this is Dawood Davis and Western Kentucky. Got to give them some credit here. And listen, Cam has given credit. He was asked about it. He said it came from Western Kentucky. But look, Canes fans, we're not hating on the fact that Western Kentucky is out there, trying to get some credit for it. We got to. It was originated there. So yes, Cam Ward and this team is making it popular, but the Hilltoppers, man, we got to give them some love, just a little bit.
And I could tell we're going to have a fun draft season. I know, Pete, you have draft experience, seeing where Cam Ward fits. I know you've communicated that certain scouts have concerns about the picks. Jason Reed from ESPN did a story.
Jordan
Reed, I'm sorry, from ESPN did a story this morning talking about his quarterback tiers. And he noted, he quoted a scout saying they were concerned about the one play that's real reckless per game. Obviously, we could think of those in our head, having watched the last couple of weeks, with probably 2 in the Virginia Tech game and certainly one big one in the Cal game. That was part of the report, but Jordan Reed also ranked him second to Shedeur Sanders in the quarterback tiers after talking with numerous personnel guys. Everybody's got an opinion. No one really knows. We've seen these lists go different kinds of ways. So it's going to be very interesting to watch that evaluation all the way through. One thing that caught my attention, though, I heard Marshawn Lynch and I heard Micah Parsons on their own podcast, nothing to do really with the Canes, both talking about how impressed they were with Cam Ward and his demeanor. They both said, look, guys like this, that they can throw a pick and not get concerned, not get down, not change their behavior, keep their level of confidence. Those are the kind of guys they like to play with, because they don't want a quarterback who's up and down and frantic. They want somebody who's steady Eddie and brings a calming presence to the huddle, allows them to do their job without worrying about the quarterback psychology. And I think I know just from hearing them, both of those guys really respect what Cam Ward's been able to do this season, and they express admiration for a college player when these guys are Pro Bowl NFL players, multiple-time Pro Bowl NFL players. So that caught my attention. Hearing Marshawn Lynch, who of course was at the Cal game as a Cal grad, and then Micah Parsons, who just does his regular podcast, both comment on Cam Ward. And I want to ask you, Pete, because you dealt with athletes that have already been in the professional ranks. Do you ever hear them talk about college players and that? Like, what's your impression of how pro players kind of look at college players sometimes?
Yeah, they don't. The thing is, they're not looking at it the same way scouts are, which is the only thing they're looking for the guys they see as football players and the guys that they would probably want to play with, right? And unfortunately, that's not always how the scouts see things. But I think it's a really good sign for him. I think that, look, to me, he's put himself in that discussion for the first round without a doubt. I think nothing solidified. Probably at this rate, still top 2 to 3 round pick. I think he's definitely there right now, the nature of where the position is drafted. But still some things to clean up, still some concerns from the NFL side. A lot of football left, though, so he can continue to change the narrative that was before the season. I think at least some scouts that I've spoken to, a lot of them are kind of looking at it like, well, he has a way better supporting cast. A lot of the issues that hurt him the last couple years at Washington State are still there, but there's a whole lot of football left and going to be opportunities if Miami plays its way into the playoffs here and deep into the postseason to get opportunities against high-level defenses, which, again, you haven't faced necessarily teams that are loaded with NFL talent to this point of the season. So these are all things that the scouts weigh when they're doing their evaluations here.
Yeah, I think you're right. And let me know what you think about this. I was just thinking of a comparison for Cam Ward, and to what I've seen to this point, you have to change certain attributes to make it work. But I see a lot of Kyler Murray in a bigger body. Obviously, Kyler Murray's 5'9", and Cam Ward's 6'1", 6'2", and thick. And then the athleticism tuned down, right? Cam Ward isn't running 4.4 or whatever Kyler Murray's running. He's not as much of a threat as a runner to pick up yards. But just the kind of calm demeanor, the playmaking instincts, the ability to really look to run to pass. Kyler Murray can run more than Ward when it comes time to running, but just the ability to really sort of play playground ball at times out there and make it work for them. I do see some Kyler Murray with Cam Ward. Again, bigger body, not as fast, not as much of a productive rudder, but a guy who's a multi-sport athlete. I did an article on Cam Ward and his multi-sport background. I interviewed him for Storm Sessions, which if you haven't watched, check it out on the official channel. Like and subscribe to this podcast, but also Storm Sessions, where I interview some of the best student athletes at Miami, starting with Cam Ward. He talked about his baseball background, basketball, the different sports. Kyler Murray, another multi-sport athlete. I do see also a Texas guy. I see some similarities. The athleticism is going to be a major difference as far as the speed, but as far as being quick in the pocket, getting out, making plays, having that playmaking instinct, I do see some of that with Cam Ward.
Yeah, outside of the stuff you mentioned, I think probably the biggest difference is Kyler Murray's arm is, he's got an absolute rocket for an arm. I don't know if Cam has that. He has a very good arm, and obviously the way they can change the arm angles, but that is something else I've heard, that the scouts don't necessarily know how elite Cam's arm is. Now, these are the scouts that I've spoken to, right? This is not the overriding opinion, but that is another area that I think Kyler probably has him in.
Yeah, look, Cam can throw. Pure horsepower, maybe.
That's the arm strength, which as we've seen in the NFL is only a very small part of the equation, but the ability to fit some of these throws and windows down the field, I think Murray. You're talking about one of the best arms that we've seen.
I would put Ward above average NFL. We'll see. People have different opinions. I think if you compare it to like a Bryce Young, I think Ward's arm is better than Bryce Young. I think Ward's, and then with Kyler Murray is an athletic arm. And I think Cam Ward has an athletic arm. Of course, the baseball background helps, which is not the arm angles only, but you can also fit over guys. I think to his touchdown to Cam McCormick a couple of weeks ago, how he's able to fit over the defenders, just ability to layer the ball, but at the same time not be throwing lollipops. I think that's where Cam Ward really excels. He has, even his touch throws have some move to him. He's just able to he talked about the podcast on the Storm Sessions with me, which again, check it out if you haven't. I'm plugging myself, but it was really an illuminating interview. And he talks, and I also wrote the article up for CanesInSight.com. So you can check it out for free there in print. But he's talking about baseball taught him about not always throwing the fastballs, but also throwing the appropriate amount of velocity for all of his throws. I think he has the arm to do that, where it's a strength for him. And Murray is similar in that way. Again, maybe the horsepower is up on all the categories with Murray, but Murray's also smaller. So you lose a little bit on the size. You gain a little bit in terms of just the explosive ability. But the way they play the game, and it's Murray is an extremely confident player. He's not someone that you see, and to be that short and to dominate like he has, you have to be really confident. I see Ward kind of built similar in that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think bottom line, D, the number one issue that I think is holding Ward back in scouts' eyes is his tendency to float back in the pocket. That will not work in the NFL. We've seen it happen against Florida and make a positive play out of it with the Jacoby George play, but then we saw the Cal interception as well. So if he can clean that up, then I think without a doubt you're talking about a first-round pick here. But that is the tendency that scares the NFL people that I've spoken to the most. And you talked about it earlier in the show, 101st and holding onto the football. That's part of it. And quite frankly, he has a very solid offensive line right now, right? So that may not always be the case at the next level. But listen, if he continues on this path, putting up these sort of numbers, he will most likely be a first-round pick.
And it's how you adapt too. Because look, yes, I mentioned he was 101st and holding the ball, but I believe he's also the highest rated passer in the country when he holds the ball over a certain amount of time. So that's part of his game. Again, another similarity I see with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray will hold on to the ball all day. With Ward, I do think he can actually be a better pocket passer than Murray because of his extra height and size. And we've seen it moments where he stands tall in the pocket, delivers throws. I'm thinking about the touchdown to Restrepo in the Florida game. You'll see moments during a game where he stands in the pocket and just delivers a strike over the middle. He can do that. I think he can do that actually more than Murray because of his size. So it's going to be about him adjusting. But he can get away with drifting and holding the ball in college. I don't think that's what's hurt him at all. Really, it's just been the kind of really, really tough picks that he's thrown, which are just that kind of playmaking instinct going a little too far and causing major issues. But I think the drifting in college has worked for him. I agree with you. In the pros, that's not going to work. He's also a small-handed player. He fumbled a ton in Washington State. We haven't seen that yet. I'm sure it'll happen during the season as he gets hit more and his offensive line gets, more parity with the other teams. It'll happen more. So he's not going to be able to drift and take those kind of sacks or potentially get sacked and give up a fumble. Can he adjust? He's not Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying he's that level of talent, but Patrick Mahomes adjusted his game considerably from where he was in college to what he was in the pros. He still kept his instincts and his playmaking, but he toned it down a lot to adjust to different circumstances. Maybe Ward can do the same. I think his athleticism, his multi-sport background, his confidence, his intelligence, and his willingness to work will give him a chance to adjust as needed because he cannot play the same way he plays in for UM in the NFL. Exactly the same way.
I got 3 words for you, D. Just beat Louisville. We're getting ahead of ourselves, man. We're talking about all this Florida State game, Cam Ward's draft status. Got to win. Got to go 1-0 this week. It was nice to have that bye week, but excited to talk Louisville this week. We'll have our Louisville analyst on later this week to get ready for the game, and I'm sure we'll do some more stuff in terms of looking at the matchup as well throughout the week. So remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we're going to keep it going, man. We've been going strong here for, I don't know, since March, right? We haven't missed a day Monday through Friday, and we're going to be getting into the recruiting season too here down the stretch. So excited for that.
Yeah, and we're going to get into Louisville deep. So stay tuned to the podcast. We're going to be breaking it down heavily, every aspect of the matchup as the week goes on, and get you all tuned up for that game. Because I do think with their play caller, with their quarterback, with their motivated group of skill position players, particularly the South Florida guys, Isaac Brown, Ja'Cory Brooks, this is going to be a tough game, tough test for a defense, which has had trouble the last 2 weeks. To me, it's a great opportunity for the defense to respond. You have a bye. You have a team that can really exploit your weaknesses, a team that killed you last year. All you got to do is turn on the Louisville film from last year to get these guys motivated, even though some of them weren't there. They could see how good Louisville was. That, to me, is going to be very, very telling how Miami's defense responds to this test. It is right there on the table for them to show that they've improved.
All right. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. Go Canes.
Go Canes.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you, and nobody do it like CanesInSight. 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 It's CanesInSight.